The wait is almost over. The 68-team field is just days away from being set for March Madness. Hello everyone, I'm Joe Cronin and welcome to the Toss-Up. Whether it is Cardiac Kemba and his iconic step back, Florida Gulf Coast, or better known as Dunk City and their Sweet 16 run, the Loyola Chicago Ramblers willed by Sister Jean to the Final Four, or most recently, NC State and DJ Burns etching their names into vending machine royalty, March Madness always delivers the magic. This past season of college basketball was a whirlwind, with another freshman phenom representing the Duke Blue Devils in Cooper Flagg, the dominant conference down south headlined by the Auburn Tigers looking to avenge last season's embarrassment, and of course, the hometown Indiana Hoosiers on their turnaround as they knock on that door for a ticket to the dance. The 2025 chapter of March Madness is here, and it is ready to bust your bracket. We have a fantastic episode coming up, so stick around and roll that intro. It's all next on the Toss-Up. Magic, thrill, and stories of a college basketball season all come together in one postseason tournament as March Madness is right around the corner. Here to preview the field, we got Quinn Richards, Audrey Marr, Ethan Bonner, and at the wall, Colin McMahon will be joining us as our expert bracketologist. This is going to be a fun show. Lots to talk about in the college basketball world. First question I have before we preview some things, I'll start with you, Quinn.
Of course.
Is this the best postseason tournament in all of sports?
I would hazard a guess that it is because, look, I mean, where else are you going to get 68 teams competing for one title? I mean, March Madness does so much for the sports world that I think it single-handedly places March as one of the best months in all of sports. I mean, we look forward to this month every single year, and there's a reason it's March Madness.
Yes, and you've seen what John Rothstein has kind of built an empire around building up to March. I mean, he's like 72 hours in advance building up to this moment. Audrey?
I don't think that It's the Most Wonderful Time in the Year should be a Christmas song.
Wow.
It's
Oh.
March. I mean,
The March Madness,
it's
intro?
March. It's March. I think it should only be meant for March. I don't see why not. March is the best playoff in the country. I am so excited.
Just an iconic intro theme song as well.
Right?
Just kind of gets the juices flowing.
imagine
that brick
it.
wall's getting run through. Ethan.
I'm going to have to agree with both of you. Yeah, March, and not even that. March Madness starts even before it starts, before the tournament starts.
Yeah.
I feel like we've already seen so many buzzer beaters happen, and I think the tournament, anything can happen. And when you look at other tournaments for other sports, you don't see as many upsets as you do here. And we talked about it, that we've had Cinderella stories almost for 3 out of the past 4 years, and anything can happen. And I think this year we're going to be in for a big surprise.
So the consensus of the panel is March Madness is the best. Now we got to talk about the best. First off, I'm going to go best story in college basketball this season. Ethan, I'll send it to you. There's a lot of good ones. Which one stands out?
Man, I'm going to have to go with the hype with Cooper Flagg. I think
He's good.
Yeah, playing for probably the best team in the country right now. I mean, you can make the case for Auburn, but he leads the team in every single major stat line as a freshman. I mean, coming in with all this hype, you'd expect a little bit of nerves, maybe some bad games here and there, but no, he has been the leader of that Duke team, and so far he's been doing a great job leading them, and I think going into the tournament, they're going to be a really strong team.
Audrey.
I mean, you could say so much with this question, but right now, I think what stands out is what Rick Pitino has done with St. John's. I don't think you're coming in with 4 losses, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, 4 losses in your first year, and your favorite for possibly being a 4 seed. I mean, it's a 1 seed. Sorry, it's crazy what he's done.
He's making St. John's relevant for the first time in 30-odd years, something like
Yeah.
that. It's been impressive. He's 72. That's crazy.
Crazy.
The ripe age of 72.
Right there.
Right.
It's funny. Every second season Pitino has, he gets 25 wins. It's the definition. It's like, I figured it out now.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
Understand it out. Yeah, thank you.
He's had the experience.
I'm going to go with a popular Cinderella pick, actually, for the NCAA tournament. How about what Ben McCollum has done over at Drake? Has the Bulldogs
Fun one.
30-3. He comes over from, was it Southeast Missouri State or Northwest Missouri State? Won some national champions at the D2 level. He comes to the D1 level. There were questions. Can he adjust? How are his players going to do? He brought some of those players with him, and they have had so much success. winning the Missouri Valley Conference in the tournament. They're ready to dance. I think they're going to make a good run in March.
This guy's just a winner, too.
He wins.
Yep.
Hey, Signetti says that he wins. How about Ben McCullum?
Ben McCollum. Remember
Just
that
Google
name.
him.
Yeah.
Remember that name, Ben McCollum. So I'm going to bring it back to you, Quinn. Still with the best, but now best team in college basketball. I know there's kind of a, there's a mix of 4 teams you can really throw on the hat here, but I guess who's your top overall seed, best team in the country?
It's so hard for me to look at this Auburn team and say that's not the best team. You got the best player. I understand Cooper Flagg and what he's done as a freshman is incredible, but Janai Broome is him.
Yes.
Auburn are them, okay? So this Auburn team, they are the best. In playing through the SEC, was kind of upset when I saw the latest AP rankings that came out on Monday because they had Duke and Houston up there. Auburn should be the #1 team in the country because Duke and Houston have not had to go through the SEC.
Yep.
Auburn is fighting for their lives each and every night, yet you look at them, they have 15 quad wins, and they're going to dominate the SEC tourney. Crazy prediction, but I think Auburn is the best team in the country.
They got Hoopers on that team.
They got
Oh,
Hoopers.
yeah. Simple. Best team.
Yeah, well, I don't want to keep it simple, but I have to go with Auburn too. I mean, to have 15 quad wins, you would have not thought in the beginning of this season, with what happened on that plane, that they would be at this point of the season. So, I mean, to see what they're doing in just one season, I mean, they're my favorite this year.
Ethan, you alluded to it at the start of the show. Who's your best team?
Man, I hate to follow the same train, but I'm going to make it a sweep. I have to go Auburn. I mean, yeah, Janai Broome, he has been excellent, and they've played 14 AP-ranked games, and 10 of them were wins. And in the SEC, there's only one other team that's played more than them, and just Auburn has been dominant, and they're still atop the SEC despite how many hard games they've had. So, yeah, give me Auburn.
Auburn across the board. So with Auburn as our consensus, what we think is going to be the top seed, we're going to bring our bracketologist, Colin, in for the first time of the show, and he's going to talk us through who he thinks the 4 1 seeds are, starting with the top overall seed. Colin, please take it away. Who you got as your top 4 1 seeds?
Like you all mentioned, Auburn has to be the consensus #1 overall seed. And then down the line, we've got Duke as my #2 overall seed, Houston as my #3 overall seed, and then rounding out the 1 seeds is Florida. And like Audrey mentioned, St. John's is in that conversation. Right now, they just don't have the level of those quad 1 wins to compete with the 4 teams I just mentioned. Michigan State, with their recent run to the Big Ten title, is also in contention. But as of right now, Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida are going to be those 4 #1 seeds for me.
I'll ask a follow-up. What would Michigan State have to do along with winning the Big Ten tournament? How much help would they need to possibly get a 1 seed?
You know, I think it would have to take Michigan State winning the Big Ten tournament. That's #1. But also, I would say it has to take a loss from one of the 1 seeds that I mentioned. And luckily for the Spartans, Auburn and Florida, 2 #1 seeds that I have currently, are in the same conference. So both of those cannot win the SEC tournament, meaning that one of them is going to take a loss. So if the Spartans do win the Big Ten tournament, you might see them on the 1 line come Selection Sunday.
Now, Colin, I'm going to keep it with you for this. The SEC, you have 2 teams that have a 1 seed. How many teams can this conference send to the March Madness tournament?
You know, the SEC has 16 teams now with these super conferences, SEC 16, Big Ten now 18. I think the SEC could send 14 of those 16 teams to the NCAA tournament, with the exception of South Carolina and LSU. Those teams are not in contention, but I have Texas on the bubble, Oklahoma on the bubble, and you've seen more recently Georgia and Vanderbilt have secured spots, and I believe that they're locks. But Oklahoma and Texas are kind of on that line. If both of those make, 14 out of the 16 SEC teams would be in the field.
14 might be a stretch. We'll see if that happens. But when talking about SEC in this modern age of college sports, you have to talk about the Big Ten. Because one's going to get mad if you don't talk about the other. That's just how it works nowadays. So with our panel here, Ethan, I'll start with you. Big Ten teams, what team's been standing out that might be able to make some noise here in March or might be a disappointment?
Man, Michigan State, what they've done has been excellent, but honestly, I'm going to go Oregon. I think Oregon has just been really well throughout the season, and I think what they can bring throughout the tournament, obviously they have a rematch with IU on Thursday, but the things they've been able to do and play as a team, it's just been outstanding to watch them throughout the season. I think they can make some noise in March because obviously they're not going to be like a 1-2 seed, so they're going to be a little lower down the list, but I think what they've done, I think they've proven that they can potentially be that Cinderella team that we could potentially talk about, but I think Oregon's up there.
They've also had years where they've gone on some runs, some unprecedented runs. So, you know, first year in the Big Ten, they did a solid job. Audrey, who's standing out in the Big Ten?
I mean, I don't know how you can't say Michigan State. I think Indiana caught them at the right time.
Yeah.
I know we said that
absolutely.
before the
Oh my
show.
gosh.
But I mean, for this what this Michigan State team looks like, this is, I think, the best that they've looked like in years. And March is known as the Izzo month for a reason. So I don't know. I don't see many teams going past them. Another team, Maryland. I think they're a fun team this year, especially Derek Queen, Big Ten Freshman of the Year. He is a powerhouse. So I don't know. I think they'll make it far in the Big Ten tournament and make a run in the NCAA tournament.
Derek Queen's like a more athletic Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
He's got a
I can see that. I
bag to
can
his
buy it.
game. I think he should stay one more year. He's got a bright future ahead of him.
does.
Quinn, though, what Big Ten team?
Yeah, the Big Ten's very interesting to me because you look like a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, you had a lot of teams in that maybe 10 to 25 range in the AP rankings. You're looking at Illinois, Purdue, Michigan. There's kind of been this polarity that's happened in the Big Ten, it feels like, where there's been two teams that have kind of risen to the occasion. I can group Oregon in there as well. But then everyone else has kind of fallen off the face of the earth. You look at Michigan, you look at some of these teams like Purdue, and they've just, losses have compiled, and they've struggled down the stretch. The team that's gone under the radar, and you mentioned him, Audrey, Maryland. I really like Maryland, and I think this is a bold prediction, Maryland's going to be the last team in the Big Ten standing in the March Madness tournament, in the NCAA tournament. I think Michigan State, I'm just hesitant based off of the scoring troubles they've had. We looked at that Indiana game, and they could not shoot the ball to save their lives. They got caught up in that zone defense Indiana threw at them. I think Michigan State could be a team that, second round, Sweet 16, they could tumble, and I think Maryland's an Elite Eight contender.
I'll bring this question back around the panel, but we can't have this show and not talk about the school that we go to, Indiana. They're on the bubble. They're in, depending on which bracketology you look at, depending on who you're talking to. They've had a turnaround ever since Mike Woodson news came out. So, Quinn, what's the deal with the Hoosiers?
It's a team with nothing to lose. You got a team led by seniors who are in their last year, being coached by a coach in his last year with the program. After that Michigan game, right, the news came out that Woodson was going to resign. It was before the Michigan game. Then after the Michigan game, you had some time to practice with that. This Indiana team has been completely different. And I think part of it is that Coach Woodson is coaching with, he doesn't have anything to lose. He's not playing Bryson Tucker. He's not playing guys that he thinks he has to keep for next season because he doesn't care. He's gone. He's on his way out.
He's just playing to win.
He's playing to win, and Indiana as a team is playing to win. If Indiana beats Oregon in the second round of the Big Ten tournament after getting that first round bye, Indiana is not only in the tournament, but they're avoiding that trip to Dayton.
It seems like there's been a fire under that team ever since Woodson has announced he's going to get the boot. And speaking of boots, Audrey, thoughts on Indiana and the postseason
Thank
play?
you. Thank you. So, yeah, I think Indiana, you said it best, Quinn. They're playing for something right now. And I think really their whole team is just really riding around their seniors. I think that's something that Woodson has said, that he's just been starting to ride on the people that have been with him the most. And I think this Indiana team, when you look at the Big Ten tournament, I think if you beat Oregon and if you win convincingly, you're in the conversation for the first round. If you win close, you're in the first four. If you lose, I think you're still in the first four. I think they've had enough opportunities at this point of the season to kind of prove themselves. And if there's a Cinderella story to have your coach leaving, basically half of your team set to graduate, I think Indiana would be the fun Cinderella story.
Ethan.
There's been a spark lit under the Indiana team. And all the emotion that was shown after senior night, especially when Trey Galloway hit that big three close to the end of the game, the way they just huddle around Woodson, they know what's left. And they have got nothing to lose. And I think one player, I'm kind of taking it in a different direction, but I think one player that's really stood out is Anthony Leal. I think, first of all, I think he's one of the Big Ten all-defensive snubs. I think he completely deserved to be on that list. But yeah, he's playing lights out. I mean, may not show up on the stat sheet, but what he's been doing to help IU pull through in these close games, he's been outstanding. But IU, they have nothing to lose. So they're going to go all in. And I think this Oregon game, I think it'll shock a lot of people and see how IU will do.
It'll be interesting to see what team shows up come the postseason when it's now win or go home for, those seniors and really for Woodson as well. And with Indiana being right on the edge of the bubble, depending on where you look at, it's only right that we see how the bubble is forming prior to Selection Sunday. We got our guy, Colin McMahon, at the wall. Full breakdown of those bubble teams. Colin, let's take it away, starting with the last four byes.
Thanks, Joe. So for my last four byes, we've got West Virginia, Baylor, Arkansas, and Indiana. And like you guys all mentioned, Indiana is on the right side of the bubble. They've had a recent surge. Saturday's win over Ohio State would have been the difference between last 4 byes and last 4 in, and that also means that if the Hoosiers were to lose to Oregon, I would still have them in the field, but as you guys mentioned, going to Dayton. And obviously the Hoosiers certainly want to avoid that, so a win over Oregon is a must if they want to jump straight into that first round. Moving into last 4 in, we've got San Diego State, Oklahoma, Xavier, and Ohio State. Obviously the Buckeyes is the team that the Hoosiers beat on Indiana Senior Day, and the Buckeyes are not looking too good. They've got a Big Ten tournament first round matchup against Iowa. If the Buckeyes were to lose that, I'd have to say they're out. First 4 out, we've got Boise State, North Carolina, Colorado State, and UC Irvine. 3 of those 4 teams are mid-majors. 2 of those out of the Mountain West, Boise State and Colorado State. Boise State is actually going to play San Diego State in the first round of the Mountain West tournament. That is a huge game for the bubble. And then going to UC Irvine, the Anteaters. Not necessarily a team you're used to seeing in NCAA tournament conversation, but them and what UC San Diego have both done out of the Big West, that league might be a too big lead, and that would surprise you. Moving further into other teams I've got in my last 4 in, Xavier and Oklahoma. They've got huge conference tournament games coming up. Xavier is going to play against Marquette. They win that, and I like them in the field. They lose, and they finish with 1 quad 1 win. Another team who only has 1 quad 1 win, North Carolina. They're currently playing in the ACC tournament, looking to make a run. They've got Wake Forest up next, and if they were to win that, they play their arch rival Duke for the 3rd time. The Tar Heels have lost the first 2 matchups against the Blue Devils. Could they make it a 3rd straight loss? If they do, I like North Carolina have 0 shot of making the tournament.
Thank you, Colin, for your breakdown of the bubble. On that UC Irvine pick, this is a conference, the Big West. They have not had a 2-bid league since 1991. Those 2 teams were UNLV and New Mexico State. Those teams aren't even in the conference anymore. But thanks again, Colin. The selection committee, they're going to have quite the field day and finalizing this field in the coming days. Stick around, though, because coming up after the break, the panelists have some hot takes and some predictions for the big dance. Don't go anywhere.
The Toss-Up, Fridays on IUSTV.
Welcome back to the Toss-Up, as the panel and Colin really set the 1 seeds of this tournament, previewed some of the storylines for the bracket in the first segment. It's now time to make some predictions, and we set the 1 seeds of the Auburn, Houston, Duke, and Florida. That's what Colin came up with. So with those 4 teams, Quinn, I'll start with you. Who's losing first in March Madness?
So I'm deciding between 2 teams. It's either going to be Duke or it's going to be Houston. And my reasoning behind this is because I think with Auburn and Florida playing in the SEC, they're battle tested. They understand what it takes to play a gauntlet of a schedule. You look at Duke. Duke has not played a ranked team in the ACC. They have not played a ranked team. Sure, they've had some tough games. They played Clemson when Clemson was just out of the rankings, but Duke is a team that they just haven't had the amount of games at that level of competition, and I'm not sold on it. And ultimately, I think I'm going to go with Duke over Houston because Duke is a younger team. Now, the thing that I like about Duke is their depth, but ultimately, I don't think that depth can save the fact that this is a young team. They don't know what it's like to play so many games in such a short span against high-level competition in March. I think that's going to show, and I think Duke, we'll say the Sweet 16, Elite 8 is around where I see them kind of teetering out. I'm going to say Elite 8. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
So you see some far runs from the 1 seeds is what I'm taking.
I do. I think this is a 1 seed dominated tournament.
Audrey?
I mean, I'm going to kind of go away from you. I would have said Auburn or Florida. I think that they will be the first, one of them will be the first 2 to fall first. I think I'm leaning towards Florida because I don't think you can lean up to the level of competition that Auburn, Houston, and Duke have shown at this point of the season. Florida, I just don't see as much from them as I do the other 1 seeds.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see what Auburn had an embarrassing loss to Yale last year.
True.
Chad Baker-Mazara got ejected, what was it, like 5 minutes into the game? But
It's crazy.
Yeah.
they're susceptible to losing,
Yeah.
as good as they are.
I don't see that happening this year. I'm between Duke and Florida. I think Houston, just how good they are defensively, they've just been so dominant throughout the season, but I'm going to lean towards Duke too. I think I mentioned it earlier about Cooper Flagg leading them in all scoring stats. I don't think he'll be able to perform at his level for 6 straight games. I agree with you, Quinn. I think Sweet 16, Elite 8 is that area where Duke will fall. And I don't see Duke being able to perform for 6 games straight. And they've only played 4 AP-ranked teams. Meanwhile, you have the other SEC teams like Auburn who have played 14 and they're in that competition. Duke, they don't have that. They're 2-2 in AP-ranked games. So I don't trust the way Duke is going. Even though they've been doing well throughout the season, I just don't think they can do that for 6 straight games going into the tournament.
It's always interesting watching those freshman-dominant teams. Like, I mean, the 2019 Duke team, or 18-19 Duke team with Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett. It's like that, all that hype. And yes, they ran into a very good Michigan State team, but, you know, they lost in the Sweet 16.
Think back to, like, Cade Cunningham on that Oklahoma State team. He was the focus of that team, the #1 overall pick going into the NBA draft, and that team faltered, I think, in the first or second round. They didn't get
Trae Young's
far.
Oklahoma, they got walloped.
There's a long history of star-led players, star-led teams kind of faltering early.
Due to timeliness, only really got one more question. It can either be hot take or championship pick. I'll let you pick which route you want to go. Ethan, I'll let you take the floor to start.
I'll start with the hot pick. I'll go with Cinderella story. I think Drake is going to go really far.
What does really far entail? Like second weekend, or is like they make the round of 32?
Oh, I think Elite 8, like maybe Final Four.
Wow.
If you want a hot take, I think Drake has been so dominant throughout the season. They're 27-3, and they're top 20 in the country in forced turnovers, offensive and defensive rebounding. And they're also one of the slower teams in terms of controlling the ball. And I think the way that they play, if they just keep doing what they've been doing throughout the regular season and just controlling the game, they are going to wipe the floor with some of the teams that they face in the tournament. And I think because of that and just how good they are in like terms of rebounding, forcing turnovers, I think that's going to set them up for some big success.
Already mentioned Ben McCollum. Audrey, hot take or natty pick? Which one you want?
Hot take. This is a hot take. I'm going to say high point to the Sweet 16. I have no reasoning as to why. I look at them and I'm March. I just look at them and think March. I don't know what it is. I just have that feeling. That's all it is.
Quinn?
I was going to say it's a hot take, but you know what? It might as well be a natty pick. Give me BYU to be in the national championship.
Oh, in the national championship.
I don't think they're going to win it, but I think BYU is a great team, and not enough people are talking about BYU.
Big 12's good.
Look at what they've done. The Big 12 is good. You say that. They've won 8 in a row to end the season. They are hot at the exact right time. They just beat a ranked Iowa State team. They have 3 wins over top 25 teams. BYU has flown completely under the radar, kind of this entry into the Big 12. BYU is going to be a good team in the tournament. I think BYU goes deep in this. I think they at least make the Final Four, put them in the national championship. They fall just short.
All right.
But I have BYU in there.
Wow. We'll keep this one quick. Not enough time for explanation, but natty pick. Who you got?
Oof.
I'm going to take Alabama.
Alabama. Okay. Nate Oates.
Nate Oates.
I'm going Duke.
Duke.
I'm going Auburn.
Auburn across the board. I got Kelvin Sampson. Obviously, that's a sore subject here in Indiana, but Houston finally getting over that hump. Favorite phrase around Indiana basketball. But that's going to wrap up this week's show. Thank you guys so much for joining the discussion. As always, follow along with our socials at IUSTV Sports on both Instagram and Twitter, as well as our toss-up Instagram as well. With that, one thing left to do. Toss it up, alley-oop dunk, I don't know, hit a 3. Steph Curry played at Davidson so long ago, but yeah, we'll see you next week. Wow, that was free balling that. I did. I was like.
Thanks for watching IUSTV Sports. Be sure to subscribe at IUSTV and follow us on Instagram and X at IUSTV Sports.